In this video, we will talk about a very important test called as the order test. Now, this is not exactly a test, but it actually groups, two different kind of tests, for certain scenarios. Okay. So let me just talk about the scenario and where we will need the order test. Now you can see on the screen, we have a very simple customer class, and this customer class has a very simple insert function here. And this insert function actually goes and inserts into a table called as TBL customer. So if you see here, if I go to my server explorer, so there's my table called as TBL customer here, right? So in other words, we have a very simple class called as customer, and which has a very simple insert function, and the insert function actually makes an insert into this TBL customer table. Okay. Now we would like to go and test this class. So definitely the best way is to go and create a simple VSTS unit test, go and invoke the customer object, and then go and execute the insert function. But the problem is not about going and executing the unit test. The problem is about how do we go and check if this test case has passed or not. Because if you see currently, this insert function is returning a void over here. So there is no way from here we can know that if this record has been inserted into the TBL underscore customer table. So we are left out with only one option, and that is to go and check in the customer table if the record has been inserted or not. So here's a pictorial representation of how we can better achieve this whole thing. So what we can do is we can create a unit test which will actually go and fire first the customer.insert, and then we can go and fire a database test which will actually go and take the records from the customer and see that if the records have been inserted or not. So what it means is that we have to logically fire both this test one after another, and that's where we can take the help of order test. Order test basically groups two test cases together and then fires them in a sequential manner. So what we'll first do is we'll go and first create a simple unit test, then we will go and create a database test, and then we'll create an order test which will actually go and take both these test cases and execute them sequentially one. So let's go ahead first and create a very simple unit test. So let's click on this insert function here and say create unit test, and we'll give a nice name to this unit test as let's say okay. So we'll create a new Visual C# test project here, and we'll give this as customer unit test, and we'll say create. So that's our unit test created, and that's our ready-made shell function also. So what we'll do is because in this unit test we are not going to really go and test something, because the insert is just a void function, right? So really there is no point in testing over here. The testing will be done by the database unit test. So what I'll do is I'm going to go and remove all the assert function from here, and let's go and also set some value. So we'll just say target dot. Now this customer has customer code and customer name. Sorry, spelling is wrong. So target dot customer code will set to something like Shiv. Target dot customer name. Something wrong with my A and R keys here. Target dot customer name here. Koirala. Gold customer is true. URL, and we'll then go and invoke the insert function. So basically we have created a very simple unit test which will actually go and invoke the insert function. Now the next thing is we have to go and create a database test, right? So that we can go and test if this data has been inserted into the table or not. So let's go ahead and right click on this customer unit test and say add new test or database unit test. We'll say database unit test customer here, right? Say okay. So the database is customer. We'll say okay. Let's go and click on this create here. Now our table name is TBL customer, right? So what we'll do is we'll say okay, let's say select star from TBL customer, right? And we'll go and give a test condition in this database unit test here. So I'm going to go and remove this inconclusive one, and let's go and add the row count, and we'll say that okay, if the row count is equal to 1, that means the data has been inserted into the TBL customer table, right? So if you see now, what we have is we have two test cases here. One is the customer test, which will actually go and invoke the insert function of the customer class, and the second one is the database unit test, which will actually go and check if the record has been inserted into the TBL customer or not by firing the select star from TBL customer and then going and checking if at least one row has been returned or not. So currently, if you see my table here, if you go to Server Explorer, currently the TBL customer does not have any kind of records here. So currently there are no records. Okay. Now the next thing is we have to group both these test cases together, and we have to fire them one after another, right? So for that, as we said, that we can do that by using the order test. So let's go and click on order test. Now the time you click on order test, you can see that it has given you the list of available tests here, and it's now telling basically how do you want to go and fire this test. So what I'll do is I'll say that okay, first go and fire the insert test, that is a unit test, and then go and fire the database test. So you can see that basically I have sequenced them over here. If you wish, you can always go and change the sequences, but currently what we want is we want the insert unit test to fire first, and then we want the database test one to go and test if the record has been inserted into the table or not. You can also see that there is a small checkbox here saying continue after failure. What it means is that in case let's say the insert test fails, do you still want to continue this test cases? So in order test, if you have one or more test cases, and if any one of them fails, right, still you want to go and continue with the testing, you can go and check this checkbox here. So I'm going to go and save this, and you can see the order test in your Solution Explorer here. That is the order test. Now it is time to go and execute this order test. Now, so what this order test will now do is it will first go and execute the customer test.cs, and then it will actually go and execute the database unit test customer. So let's click on test, Windows test view, and let's go and execute the order test. So you can see here's the order test here. Now let's go and execute the order test. So right click and say run selection. Now once you say run selection, you can see that it has first executed the unit test, that is insert test, and then it went and executed the database test to check if the records are existing on the table or not. So if you go to the table now, Server Explorer, we should be able to find one record inserted into the table. So if you see here, that's the record inserted. Great. And in case, let's say that if there were some failures here, for example, let's say that if the class had some defect, for example, let's go to our customer class here, and let's say for some reason the developer forgot to code or forgot to call the execute non-query. So in that case, just go and build the solution, and let me also go and just delete the records of my TBL customer, because I don't want the past test case to affect the current one. So let me go and do a delete here. Great. Now you can see that I have injected a defect here. In other words, the developer has forgotten to call obj command.execute non-query. In other words, what will happen now is that no records will be inserted into the TBL customer, and it should actually show that the complete test case has failed. So I'm going to go and again run the order test here. So let's go to test view, and let's right click on order test one and say run selection. Now you can see that the test case has failed, and this is what we want. So you can see that what it's saying is that okay, I ran that insert test, it seemed to pass, but then later the database test confirmed that no records were inserted into the database. So in this way, order test basically logically groups test cases together and then runs them in a particular sequence. So you will use order test whenever you want to go and logically group test cases and run them in a particular sequence. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. In this video, we we first try to understand what exactly is order test, and we saw the scenario where order test is useful.